Welcome to this week's Real Lawyers podcast. I'm honored to have John Corey on. John Corey's in our camp, but it's more that we joined his camp by virtue of us both valuing the idea of thought leadership, and a lot of it coming through writing and publishing, relevant publishing. John is the president and co-founder of Green Target. It's a strategic communications firm focused exclusively on business-to-business organizations, and they're behind the respected State of the Digital and Content Marketing Report. It's an annual report that's been coming out for over a decade, and so it's kind of the gold standard for law firms in evaluating what they should be doing in the area of beyond communications, writing, publishing, use of social media. It can be a Bible for my company, LexBlog, in knowing how we can best help large firms through publishing. I relate well to John. He's also a Midwesterner, and which people know me to say that all the good things come from the Midwest.
Yes.
So it's great to have you. And along with his co-founder, Aaron Schoner, John's built Green Target into one of the leading law and professional services organizations to help them earn authority, not through flash, but through meaningful publishing, thoughtful earned media, which they accomplish a lot in getting earned media for their clients, through research-driven thought leadership. I've seen some of John's presentations in conjunction with law firms for research that they've done on various topics. So the span of their capabilities is pretty wide. And so today what we wanted to do was to dive into the research that comes out on an annual basis and, get into John's perspectives on what he's found running from year to year and most recently from the last report. But maybe you could describe for folks what your purpose was in doing this report years ago and what it's evolved to today.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. And thank you for having me on the show, the podcast. It's always great to talk to you, and I enjoy just catching up with you on all things publishing, law firm marketing, and just changes in the profession. So yeah, we've been doing this research now for 15 years. It's hard to believe. It seems like yesterday when we launched the inaugural report at the Harvard Club in connection with an American Lawyer Marketing and Business Development Forum. And at the time, it was very focused on social media. Remember, I was asked to participate on a panel, and it was Jolene Overbeck at the time who was coming over, and she was the CMO at DLA Piper, which was a big client. And she's like, you know what? I'm chairing this event. I'd love to have you come on and talk about social media. We're hearing a lot about Twitter and and Facebook and LinkedIn. Why don't you come and educate the audience on why they should be using and thinking about these tools? And I thought to myself, you know what? That'd be great to be a part of this conversation, but there seems to be a missing element here, the voice of the client. To what extent are clients, buyers of legal services, are they engaging in these platforms? How do they think about these platforms in terms of their attitudes, their preferences, their tendencies? And we thought, you know what? No one has actually gone and measured the extent to which they're using them. I was with my business partner. We're actually down at a business retreat for Green Target. So we're about 10 years, or no, just under 10 years into our founding. And we were having a cigar and we were contemplating this panel because I thought it was going to be a great opportunity. And I said, yes. He and I both were like, let's go and do a piece of research on this. So we went and did the research. We presented those findings, and what an audience there was when we presented, how clients were thinking about how they were using the tools. It sparked a lot of conversations, and that's how the project began. Now you fast forward to 2025, and it's a much broader study now, looking at the information consumption, broader information consumption behaviors, attitudes, and preferences of both in-house counsel and the C-suite. We added the C-suite around 2017 because chief executive officers and CFOs and COOs, then you think about chief strategy officers and chief information officers. They have a very important role in hiring outside law firms, and they have a great deal of influence in the decision making to hire outside law firms. So it's become a great project, and the findings in 2025, there's some interesting and important insights that I think law firms and broader professional services firms can build into their content, their public relations, their communications, and I think their client development. I mean, all of this is really geared to helping firms communicate more clearly and bringing information in the right formats, on the right forums, where clients congregate, so that the time spent on publishing and communicating and demonstrating thought leadership, that it can be as efficient as possible and as targeted as possible.
Yeah, and one of the things that your report did, and I'm sure that law firms may have looked at it to do these things, but it certainly opened my eyes to the idea that the data that you collect in the business that you do
Yep.
is worthwhile to organize and share in a professional way. So you and Aaron are looking at it from the standpoint of, we can see that our clients have these questions and concerns. We look at those things maybe from a different perspective. Can we reduce that information or gather that information together in a way that can help them? For example, I was inspired by your report to start putting data together on blogs. Which subjects were covered the most, which were the gaps, put it together, nowhere near as detailed as your reports might be. But what that did for me was it put me on the speaking circuit around large law firms because they wanted to see me talk about that report. So for people following Green Target, it was a great role model for professional services firm. For the areas in which you specialize in, put together reports and studies, which you coach firms to do, John.
Yeah.
That what it does for you is it puts you in the lights. I'm obviously biased to blogs to start with, but to put this into context, a little bit long question, blogs were just the mechanics in which citizen journalists could publish. There was no way to publish when you had a website because it was tables and cells, and you would have to contact your website developer to write an article that was going to go on a website. Well, all of a sudden, when blog software came out, in 2000, 2001, people started to use it in 2003. It was like, my God, this is a printing press that I can publish to. So we used the term blog, but it was really citizen publishing. The lawyer could publish. And so I use the term publishing pretty broadly to cover it all. I think you do to some extent too, but you split it up. But your report shows that blogs and thought leader sites remain pretty highly valued by both in-house counsel and C-suite. Why did those channels over all these years remain so resilient? We're now in 2025. These things have been around for a while, but when you're thinking about thought leader sites and blogs and publishing, why are they so resilient?
It's a great question. Let's take a step back, I think, and look at some of the key findings, some of the high-level findings from the 2025 report, which I think shed light
Right.
on that really good question, just in terms of how, blogs, thought leader, oriented blogs have remained a constant, a nice, steady, growing constant in terms of, information that clients find to be valuable for business and industry and legal news and information. So some of the top line findings that we found in 2025 is, number one, is that C-suites and in-house counsel, they find traditional media to be most valuable. So editorial filtered media. This is an audience that values curation, and in the conversations that we've had with both in-house counsel and the C-suite to contextualize, this finding, they've told us that, they value trusted editors that are sifting through the noise to spotlight what matters most. So we're at a time when, all of us are being inundated from every conceivable direction, our social feeds, our email feeds. There's misinformation, there's information echo chambers. But when it comes to business, industry, and legal news information, they value that curation. And there's three different levels. It's the more the mainstream business financial, like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, leading industry publications that cover sectors like private equity, or maybe it's financial services, life sciences, healthcare, energy. And then media covering the profession. And that's where like the American lawyers and the corporate counsels come to be. But next on the list are blogs. 72% of in-house counsel say that blogs are valuable sources of content, really valuable sources, just under, right up there with the editorial filtered media. And then 62% say that blogs play an important role in helping them to research outside firms and organizations for potential hire. And that number has trickled up a little bit over the years. And I think it's because of a lot of things that you talk about, Kevin, which is you have buyers, you have sophisticated buyers in-house that have needs on specific topics, specific issues at the intersection of a practice area and a sector. And as the number of publishers have grown over time, some are very talented, some are very gifted at delivering those insights, actionable insights, right? That's relevant, that has some urgency to it. They're bringing their own novelty, their own flair in terms of, what they think is most interesting in terms of a revelatory insight or some type of actionable point of view. I think the utility piece is really key too. So I just think there's an audience. So there's an audience there that need guidance on any number of issues.
Yeah. And I pick up the report, there's days when you're doing your job and you're wondering, are you pushing a rock up the hill? Will you ever get it over the top?
Yeah.
And so I pick up the report and I go, wow, earned media, 88% trust. Where does that leave things like, thought leadership and blogs? And I go, oh my God, they're at like 66 or 69. And I'm thinking, if I would have told somebody in 2004 that don't worry, blogs will be inching up against a Wall Street Journal article as far as authority level for a senior executive, they would have thought I was on drugs. The other thing that people will start to question them at sometimes, and they'll say, well, an article that I find on the web or a blog that I find on the web,
Yeah.
is it really reliable? Or what if it's cited in ChatGPT? And I said, what if the source is Latham or Skadden? Why would they put out misinformation on their site or on their blogs? There's still that reservation about it where they find it for some people. I think they're missing something. You define, thought leadership pretty broadly, and you value it pretty highly in the report because it and the speaking opportunities it gleans you, the earned media appearances it gets you. How do you distinguish between when somebody will say marketing content or content marketing, or do you, and the real thought leadership that you start to reference in the report?
Yeah. Well, we take and you're so right. I mean, thought leadership is one of the most overused terms out there. Everybody uses it. Clients use it. People in our profession use it. And it's really, for us, it really comes down to audience. One of the things that I think makes our firm very unique, that's why we started to talk about authority. Okay. So we're an organization, we're a strategic public relations and communications consultancy, and we are focused exclusively on helping law, professional, and financial services firms to create positions of authority, unique positions of authority, by helping them to participate skillfully. And this is very important, helping them to participate skillfully in the conversations that matter most to their key audiences. Now, to be able to do that, you have to have, what we call a very good research, voice of the client orientation. So our research capability is, I think, the most differentiated and special part of our offering. It's the one thing that I think that we have that, that any of our competitors in this space do not have. And when I talk about that, I mean that on any given day, any given week, we are having a dialogue with buyers of legal services across industries, across areas, because we're publishing anywhere from 40 to 50 major reports a year for our clients in the law, consulting, accounting, and financial services space. And we do a lot of research for ourselves as well, which is we're talking about our research. But we're asking them about, what are your challenges? What are your pain points? What's at the top of your leadership agenda? And what are the most pressing topics and issues where you need guidance right now from your outside law and professional services advisors? So that's like gold to us when we're having that regular conversation from different audiences across different geographies and different sectors. And those legal department buyers and those C-level executives, the CEOs, the COOs, et cetera, are telling us, this is my biggest challenge right now. This is where I'm focused in terms of my agenda. And this is where I need guidance. I need guidance on these issues right now, these topics and issues. And then we take that knowledge and we're able to educate our clients. We're able to go to our clients and say, very respectfully, we know more, have greater insight into your buyers than you do, because we make it our business to be connecting with them and talking to them and pulling information out of them on an ongoing basis. And we can build those insights into the public relations, communications, content, and other programming that we're developing for our clients. So back to your question, to us, thought leadership is really about taking a real up-to-the-minute need and challenge, that a client has for guidance and insight, in being able to deliver very actionable content and insights, whether it's a research report, whether it's a white paper, whether it's a podcast, a video, a feature story in a leading trade publication. It doesn't matter. It could be channel agnostic, but are we delivering an insight that is appropriate for that channel based on what we know that client cares about and needs right now? To us, that's how we think about and define thought leadership.
You repeatedly used, the danger is the non-relevance. And so when I read your report,
Yeah.
and you're looking at the firms kicking out content, but is it relevant? And have you focused on the word relevant?
Yes.
So I've got to guess that that's what you're talking about there, that, we know what's relevant. Don't go off into voodoo writing because some other firm has a blog or a report on some subject and you just wong it.
The relevance issue, here's the problem with it. So much of marketing across these platforms like LinkedIn and email and whatnot, there's just massive lists and massive connections, right? You think about the clearest form of delivering an expertise and an insight from a counselor to a client on the receiving end. The blogging relationship is a great one. I'm blogging on tax-related issues in life sciences industry. People, if I'm good and I'm a good publisher and I'm current on my insights, things that, that my audience cares about, they're going to come to me to get those insights. I think the problem is when you think about LinkedIn, depending on how well, a client curates their feed or whatnot, they're going to get a lot of stuff that isn't relevant to them. That's no one's fault. That's just the way they've set up their
It's just
feed.
what it is.
Yeah. But when you think about, email, that's the thing where I think clients start to get annoyed. It's like, hey, I'm a life sciences company in Boston, and I'm a voracious purchaser of really high-end IP counsel, some transactional here and there, but I'm getting all kinds of information about other sectors and other practices because it's hard to keep lists current in CRM. And those are just things that I think we try to point it out to say that, in the context of your firm or your organization, think about how you can start to make some incremental improvement in that. We don't think anyone's really to blame. There's just a ton of information out there.
Well, it's new. This is all new. The idea of 25 years ago saying that media will be all over the board and you'll have a hard time catching it in your hands, what's media and what's not. What's TV today? CNN's starting to convert into digital shows on your iPhone as opposed to investing in the nightly news. It's strange. One point that you found in the report were that articles and speeches by thought leaders were among the top 3 ways that clients decide who to hire. Right behind trusted referrals. So if I'm looking at, because I always looked at it as a practicing lawyer, I practiced for 17 years. And if somebody said they contacted me because another lawyer gave them my name, or the lawyer called me and said, I've got somebody want to send you, can you talk to them? That was the best way to get a matter. For me, it was a case as a trial lawyer. To now look at articles that I can do from my computer in my family room that might gain me speeches being right up there in the top 3. How did that all come about? Where you now look at that type of thing, these top 3, a referral from another person.
Yep.
Articles and speeches is the top 3.
It just became, trying to connect, always finding ways to connect this information to client development, right? At the end of the day, I think the reason firms are making these investments and the reason their individual partners or managing directors, if you're at a consulting firm, are making these investments because they want to educate their audiences, they want to showcase their expertise, and ultimately they're doing it. Yes, they want to build brand and visibility for themselves and their organization, but they're doing it to cultivate relationships, right? To open doors for business development. So that's been a great question that we've asked. I think we've asked it now for 10 of the last 15 years, which is, it's, how important are the following and influencing your decision to research and ultimately hire outside individuals and firms? And referrals from trusted sources, always number one. And I think that just gives the question so much credibility. It's always going to be that way. And I've moderated a number of GC panels, and I remember a recent one with the GC of T-Mobile, and she said, when I get hit, let's say there's a thorny investigation that might be around the corner or a complex transaction, we got to get this transaction done. If I don't have a go-to person within my set of firms, I go to my peer group. I got a couple of peer groups, and I ask them, hey, I have this situation. Who would you recommend? And there's just so much trust and credibility in that because, they're trying to help one another, right? There's nothing to gain. You want to refer someone that has done right by you and given you
Right.
excellent counsel.
Yep.
Other peers have done well. So that's great. But then you're right. Number two is articles and speeches. So speaking and publishing and presenting and demonstrating expertise on topics and issues that clients are grappling with today. That's very important. And again, those have to be topics that are relevant, that have some urgency to them, some time sensitivity to them. And she told me, the T-Mobile GC, she said, yes, once I kind of get that referral and I kind of get a sense of okay, here are a couple people I want to hire, then I go check them out. And what does their online presence look like? Are they writing about that issue? Are they blogging? Are they speaking? Do they have demonstrated authority on that particular topic where I need help? Because when it's high stakes in particular, that gives comfort. That gives comfort, I think, to that research and that ultimate hiring decision about who they're going to go with.
Yeah.
It was just, that question was designed just to show like, hey, these things are important. You hear marketers talk about that a lot, but what's the connection to client development and making hiring decisions?
Yeah, and what I hear back from the lawyers I speak to that are publishing is when they get, it's not necessarily that the blog may show up number one on the search engines. They
Yeah.
often do for niche subjects, but and they're showing up in AI now as authoritative as far as sources. But it's when they get the referral, the referee, that large corporate client thanks the person that referred because, my gosh, I went and looked. This person writes regularly on this issue.
Yeah.
So it reinforces the referring party feels better because you've put them in a position to look good by what you're doing. I want to ask you a question that you must have thought about, and then we'll get into some AI information.
Yeah.
But as you look at the delivery of information and how people receive it, obviously we have search engines. We have Google. I mean, I don't know why we call them search engines because there's not another one that everybody goes to very often.
Yeah.
But and it's always relied on signals of relevance and authority. And the more information that Google gets out there, the signals of authority get weakened. And sometimes, as I look at it, you can go look for a lawyer on a niche subject at a particular time of the day. If you do it after 7, it's okay because the ads go away. Before that, it's pretty low. So it's still worthwhile. But now we've got ChatGPT and people are starting to go to it and they're just doing research on a question. And I'm starting to randomly see sources show up as publications that are published by lawyers or articles published by lawyers.
Okay.
How are you starting? This isn't necessarily the focus of your report, but how are you guys starting to see that evolve, the AI's role in publishing and relevance for the C-suite and firms?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like you said, you think about like what's going on right now, right? So these AI tools are growing rapidly, and Google's AI overviews, those are increasing these no-click searches. So that is just let's say if you're not going to Chat GPT to search, and I think you're right. I think people are going to Chat GPT to search. I'm going to it all the time, and I go to Perplexity and I go to Claude. I got a handful of different ones that I use, but no-click searches, that's a thing on Google, right? You're getting those AI overviews, and you're also seeing AI-generated posts. They're starting to crowd feeds, and that's limiting engagement. And that content is still it's training the LLMs, and you're seeing how this affects newsrooms too. They're focused, and they're forced to compete with these aggregators in AI-authored summarized content, which is there's just so much information that is out there right now being generated and produced by AI. So what we're trying to do, Kevin, is really we did a white paper on this that we released in the last couple of weeks, and we just did a webinar on it last week. So the impact that AI is having on search, right? Because you're right. Now that you can go and get something from the AI overview on Google or go to ChatGPT, what can you do to boost the authority of your content? It's really posing an existential threat to, publishers. And we're talking to major consulting firms and accounting firms and law firms. A lot of their thought leadership is kind of in jeopardy unless we change how we think about, interacting in dealing with search. So there's SEO, and then there's this new thing called GEO, for generative AI, things that you need to do and can do. The AI is great at summarizing everything in the past, but in terms of, you as an organization, as you as a lawyer, bringing a novel, differentiated point of view, new ideas, creative ideas, and then delivering those through own channels and distributing that content through own channels so that the AI start to recognize those answers, kind of creating those answers and packaging that content in a way that is going to be better recognized by the LLMs. That is something that our digital and content teams are working on. I'm not the expert in that area, but it's a fascinating topic.
It's when I go out and try to talk to SEO experts and
Yeah.
retain them for working on different things, is they won't take the work right now because it's a vague land as to what the next 6 months to 12 months is going to be that would retain them to do. Colin's working on probably one of the most significant things we've got going on in the company, just as an aside, that is building out this community of high qualified publishers. Because I was starting to see just in my own use of GBT that Lexblog was coming up as an authority. And I'm thinking, well, we got 21 or 22 years of legal publishing that's up there. I guess we would be. We're kind of like a legal library, I guess, is what it's seen. And I'm starting to think, okay, this is like the Yale or the Harvard Club. If you could see who the influential people were in there on a particular subject, you might start to rely on them with more authority. So to build out that network, to bring in all the legal publishing. So it's not only Lexblog client blogs, but any publishing. It can come in for free. And then as people want to have, profiles built around that and whatnot, begin to display that. So be our effort to try to help with signals of authority coming from firms, because we wouldn't let in what you're calling the AI generated content and everything. But it's a different world. I mean, I'm sitting here today and I'm going, we ought to be Green Target's client. We should be getting the coaching as to relevance to turn around and use with our clients. We should be using the white papers to explain the issues that are coming up with AI and how firms are addressing it and how you can address it. Because it can only help us, help our clients with that type of stuff. Let's get to the AI area you guys covered in depth and did a real nice job at it. I'm not even going to ask you why you started to dive into the AI, because you can't go around the block without running into talking about somebody about it.
Right.
What was your goal when you started to dive into AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was back in, and I know we talked about this before, but back in 2022, the last time we did the research, AI was certainly a thing, but we didn't ask about AI. We never asked about AI because back in 2022, it was about predictive analytics, machine learning, natural language processing. These are very important things, right? But generative AI and the ubiquity around Gen AI, that was not a thing yet. So we know that this is having a profound impact on all organizations.
Tell my listeners what the difference is, between when you get to generative AI, and what other people might refer to AI. So it's not all AI groups, everything.
Yeah, well, I think the generative AI is just, we're talking about large language models. We're talking about ChatGPT. We're talking about Perplexity. We're talking about Claude in the general sense. Certainly there are AI power. I mean, every technology, walking around the Legal Marketing Association conference, right, a couple of weeks ago, every legal tech provider now has AI at the center of their offering. I mean, it is, generative AI is at the center of everything. And I think it was James Barkley at Passel who said, AI is as bad as it's ever going to be right now. It's just going to be getting better and better and better. It's evolving rapidly. We wanted to understand, okay, what is the impact this is having on clients, but more importantly, in the realm of information consumption and content development and understanding the information needs that clients have. To what extent, do they want to be receiving insights and guidance on AI-related topics? So that was really the genesis of it. We got to ask this. We have a candid audience. We got to hear what they have to say. So it's kind of interesting. We found that, rising demand for AI related guidance, which is huge right now. There's a lot of urgency around it. It's taken attention away from the topics that were really urgent back in 2022. Topics like DEI and ESG. We had asked the question, we had the last handful of years, what are the most pressing topics and issues where you want guidance from your outside firms? DEI and ESG, they were up here in 2022 and in 2020. Now that Gen AI is here, they've they're still important, but they've scaled way back. So it looks like Gen AI is, sucking some of the air out of the room, so to speak. Now, cybersecurity and data privacy, it's still the number one area where clients want advice from law firms in terms of that outside guidance. But we know that data privacy and IT issues are critical to address as AI implementation grows. So they're very much hand in hand. Even though that we see cyber and data privacy high on the urgency list, we know that AI is a big part of that because there are huge data privacy issues related to it. Now, 75% of clients, buyers, that we spoke to in our survey, they have implemented or are considering implementing generative AI right now. Yet less than half of them say they're satisfied with the guidance and the insights that they're getting from their outside law firms. So there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to bring real insight, real guidance in a way that is going to help them to navigate and address these issues. And we got some better insight on that I'll get to here in a minute. But so less than half are satisfied, but 90% said they plan to integrate AI of some type into their business functions of diverse types moving forward. So a lot of implementation has occurred. They want guidance. They're not satisfied with what they're getting, and there's a lot more investment in implementation coming up. So those are some of the big picture findings. And like I said, that demand for AI guidance, it's diverting attention from some of these other areas, like diversity, equity, inclusion, sector-specific updates, environmental, social, and governance, the ESG piece, which we talked about. Now, we think these are still very important topics, but AI is so urgent and clients are trying to wrap their arms around it. There's so much to figure out. And then we ask, what are the topics? What are the areas that you're most concerned about right now in terms of your business and considering and or currently implementing or planning to implement AI? And they told us in a number of key areas: data privacy and or IT issues related to AI. That's number one. Industry trends and developments. They just want to know what's happening in the space because it's evolving so rapidly. Internal training and education. Best use cases for our industry. So other companies in our industry, our peers, our competitors, what are they doing? What are their best use cases? What successes are they seeing? External regulatory and policy developments. That's obviously a really big area. There's not a lot of law in regulatory lanes for how to deal with and manage the development, implementation of AI. So keeping a very close eye on that. Internal governance and oversight in terms of roles and responsibilities. Internal policy development. Policy development is a big one internally. And then lastly, ethical usage. So these are the areas where they most need and want guidance right now from their outside firms.
When I hear you say that, two questions come immediately to mind, or just context. 21 years ago, if you would, let's say it was whatever subject was that you said there was a pressing need for your clients, potential clients, to have this information, and I would have said there's this thing called the internet where you should be giving that information away for free in order to get works, I would have told I was on drugs, because I was by certain firms. They said, you're asking me to have our lawyers spend their time giving away the insight that we have for free? And I said,
Yeah.
yes. I said, it's kind of like the lawyers that wrote books. They looked to be very knowledgeable, and their books were in libraries, and people didn't have to pay to check them out. Or they were available from legal research platforms that had the journals and books. Doesn't that strike you as amazing? And the firms have this great insight. They have brilliant people, the firms that you're working with. They're giving the information away to get work. To me, it's ground changing what's happened over 20 years period of time, because we've had this printing press that they can use. And it kind of turned everything upside down. The second thing that came to mind was There was a op-ed piece in New York Times, I think on Monday, and it was from one of the leading executives at LinkedIn, and they looked at the professions that were the most susceptible to where the bottom rung was going to be hit. So the first people to get jobs was going to be hit. And in the top four, they put, and it was kind of shocking. One was tech, because the junior developers, AI could do what they did. And
Yeah.
so now tech workers are having a hard time getting those first jobs. Second was law grads, because the things that usually a law grad could do, perhaps AI could prepare drafts of different things to get it to another associate or a partner. The next were paralegals in large firms because of the processing work that they did. And then, I mean, think about it. The last was service workers in retail stores. So it was shocking. I looked at it and I go, you mean a lawyer at a large firm, a law grad from a decent school, is as susceptible as not getting a job as somebody at Target? That's scary. What would you tell somebody that, are coming, maybe it doesn't matter as much at University of Michigan, but maybe it matters at Michigan State, because at Michigan, you may have, 400 firms coming for one lawyer. In Michigan State, it may be just the opposite, as one professor told me there. What's the opportunity for a law student or a young lawyer beginning to sink their teeth into these type of issues you like to talk about, like pick a niche and begin to publish, to build relationships, to build a name? What do you see as the opportunity there?
It's interesting. Guess who I'm having this conversation with right now? With my son. My oldest, who just finished his first year in law school at Cornell. And, and he's on LinkedIn, and he's a traditional kind of I would say, he got a classic liberal arts education. He did a ton of reading, philosophy, history, likes to write, likes to think. And he loves just the curriculum for law. I mean, he worked his tail off this first year and, learning about contracts and civil procedure and crim and all these different topics. He loves it. He wants to get on the private equity transactional side. But we've been talking about this very topic, Kevin, and I'm like, you're at such an interesting moment in this industry right now. You have these tools and technologies that are going to change and revolutionize the practice in ways that I don't know we have fully comprehended yet. But I think it's what I'm telling him, and is the best I can, is continue to master your craft and your inputs and your reading and your studying and your analytical thinking. That is so critically important. And pay close attention to these tools. These tools are just in their infancy. So the Chat GPTs, the Claudes, the Perplexities, firms that he works at, they're going to be taking the Harveys and they're going to be creating, closed models and how they feed that. And just to, like I'm telling you, like in the realm of continuing education, really focus on the progression of this technology and how it applies to you being able to deliver better, faster, more competent, trusted counsel, because it's going to be a thing of speed and quality and accuracy. All these things are going to be happening, but it's only going to be as valuable as how educated and smart and skilled you are in the traditional sense of the profession. So we're talking about those two things, but we're also talking about building personal brand.
Yep.
And building relationships and the role that, publishing and credentialing and, that's going to play. And I said, right now it's about you get on LinkedIn and you're learning and consuming. You don't have a whole lot to teach anybody right now, frankly. You can go and engage posts and, kind of like the more social stuff, and that's all good. But find really smart people, that are out there. And I tell them the blogosphere or on LinkedIn, different partners, leaders of different firms, thought leaders, influencers. So I think it's about mastering your craft in the traditional sense, but really, mastering these tools. And I think young people coming up, that are born in this digital age, I think they have a leg up and can really build that into their process, from day one in their careers, right?
Where you touched on the network was so important, because that was the other thing that the LinkedIn executive talked about. Not only to begin to build out that name, it's to build out that network. I can think of, I could rattle off 5 or 6 law grads that didn't have to apply for a job. They got asked to join large firms because they met somebody through publishing. And they don't have to teach anything. They just have, a law student just needs to be observant as to reading on subjects and to share it. And they might be able to say why they shared it. It could be no other different reason than this is what I'm studying in class and I find this interesting, or it relates to contracts or anything. But that's a little bit of a side issue, but it's interesting what you're saying, not only from somebody that has great skills and research in the space, but as a dad. It makes it very, very relevant in looking at, as far as the future of, you're covering generally the need for AI. What do you see for the role? I mean, you're not the publisher per se, but you certainly sure as heck cover what's going on in publishing as far as earned media and what's coming out from authoritative thought leaders and law firms and other professional services people. What do you see the role being, let's say, for AI today in a publisher's hand? And what might it be in the future? Because I constantly tell people, it's not like we're going to push a button and it's going to kick out the report and then Skadden's going to have a blog post. It's just unlikely to happen today. Maybe it'll happen down the road. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you guys talk about on that?
In our latest white paper. I mean, think about the equalizing effect it's had, right? So now people that have no thought leadership, no subject matter authority can now go publish any number of things on any number of topics, immediately. And so now you got all these people that are purported experts. So that has happened, right? But here's the thing, for real forward-looking creative insights, AI can't replicate that. It can't yet. I'm not saying, it might not, be able to more closely resemble that, like in the realm of agentic AI. We didn't ask about agentic AI, by the way, but that's a big topic, right? And that, just for the, for listeners, that refers to this emerging type of AI system that can make decisions and take actions independently, right? Often without human intervention. So having more emotional intelligence and empathy, that's coming. So that's actually coming. But right now, which is scary to think, right? It's scary to think about that. But right now, it's like AI cannot replicate you. You have a point of view about something coming down the pike or an action that a client should take or key considerations, around a particular area of law or facing a particular sector. I mean, I think it's important that we continue to do original writing. Original writing and original publishing needs to occur. There's so much of that, what we call the AI slop that is out there, but in terms of the people that you're catering to and legal publishers, that's not, I think that we have to put original words down on paper, and we can use the AI to help refine different pieces of that or how we express it. And I think we use the AI as a thought partner, and this is what we're big proponents of, using it as a thought partner to get the research, to get the information. And you got to test that. You got to make sure that, all of that is accurate, but use it in that way. But we try to really, and at least, it's like every organization's different, but we're all about everything's got to be originally written, and we use the AI to refine where we need it. But if we just start using it to produce drafts of things, it's just going to look like all the other stuff that's out there.
Yeah,
Can't do it.
Yeah, I'm reminded of an interview that Walter Isaacson had with Reid Hoffman not that long ago, and I think it was on the Amanpour an Hour, and Walter's saying, "Well, Reid, AI, can it take people's jobs away?" And Reid said, I think sometimes that's a little bit overblown." And he said, let's say there's 20 skills or components to a person's job. So let's just say there's 20 components to sitting down and writing content as an authority. And Reid said there's probably 15 that AI can do pretty well, but there's 5 that are going to take that human. And what you need to do over time is to figure out which 5. And then Reid took it a step further and said it's going to have to be our government, the companies, and schools. They're going to be able to divide that 15 and 5, for people, so that they understand that their job may not be at risk. It's just be identifying the things that they need to do versus what a machine can do, type of thing. So I think of that as you're saying that.
Yeah.
what's the role of the person? Question when you were talking about, we're just about to wrap it up, but there's the other world too that you do mention in the report. It's not another world. It's publishing. It's media. Your digital media that could come all the way from TikTok. I was shocked at the numbers of TikTok. It was out there and even mentioned in a report that talked about C-suites and whatnot. You have Instagram. You have all this video as well. But yet you just now, and I'm not saying you exclude any of these, you eloquently talked about the power of the word, the writing, and whatnot. How do you personally and professionally look at the two and how they're weighted, or how do they fall into this publishing space where you have the video over here, the new type of social media, and the writing, the gravitas that I sometimes think comes from that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? Is it in terms of, when we're talking about in-house counsel and C-suite executives and just, in the context of our study, we asked the question, what is your preference level for the following types of content? We ask about articles and research reports and conferences and webinars and podcasts and video and interactive charts. And articles are at the top of the list for both CEOs and for in-house counsel. This is an audit they like to read. They like to read. They like the written article. Research reports are second, conferences and webinars, so in-person events, and certainly, forums like this, in receiving information through webinars, and in going on down the list, and they're all very close. We asked that question on a 0 to 5 scale, 5 being most preferred. And in the report, we kind of show it's a horizontal bar chart, and it's based on the mean scores of that 0 to 5. So the lowest being podcasts are like a 3.9, whereas articles are like a 4.95. But they like the written word. They've always liked the written word. And I put blogs in that category. Yes, you have growing audiences, that are, younger audiences are going to be on TikTok. We'll see, how that evolves through recruiting, alumni, other cool things you can do with that. But the written word, writing, it's something that is very important. And they tell us, what attracts you most, to the things that you are reading. There's a lot that they have vying for their attention. All of us do. Okay. I don't care if it's whoever it might be, not just clients, you and I, everybody that's in the professional world. They want utility. It's got to be actionable. They got to know it's going to give them something that is important to them right now. It's got to be current. There's got to be some time sensitivity, some urgency. Like, I have to deal with this right now. That's not to say that evergreen perspective isn't important or content isn't important. But I think right now there's so much happening in the world, geopolitically, economically. Of course, we have AI. We have this new, kind of revolution, this new really important point in time that is changing, organizations at their core in terms of transformation. So I think that, it's got to be current. Sources are important. The institution, the entity behind that content, whether it's the New York Times, whether it's The Economist, whether it's Kevin O'Keefe, or just a recognized authority on a given topic or issue. So writing is not going away. The written form, it's very important. It's not to say these other areas aren't important too. Podcasts, people like podcasts, people
We're
like
doing
video.
one.
It's good stuff.
No, I'm not dissing it. It's refreshing to wrap it up. With this, and when you're talking about these things, and I'm thinking about the Tanya Forsyth who coined the term privacy law when she's at Proskauer and wove up through the ranks and is now at the New York Times, guiding them. Or Jeff Nowak, in Chicago, that was doing employment law and just sunk his teeth into FMLA.
Yeah.
To now, he's the FMLA guy for everybody in the United States and internationally, all through writing. What do you tell a lawyer that's listening today that thinks, maybe it's too late? There's too much noise coming through. Those, the Tanya Forsyths, the Jeff Nowaks, they started 10 years ago, so they're so far ahead I could never make a dent in any niche. What do you tell them? I mean, if it was your son.
Yeah, here's what I'd say. You're right. It's now is the time to start. So don't worry about being too late. there's the opportunity to figure out, like, where can you find white space? Like, how can you bring a point? Because there's a lot of any given topic. We have clients, they want to be, private equity and and tax and healthcare and life sciences and energy. These are topics that are so competitive, so overly saturated. But with a little bit of secondary research and using tools like AI, understanding when you look at all of the stories and the reporting and the articles and everything that's coming down on that topic, you can start to identify some themes. And through that process of distilling what's out there in the aggregate, you can find opportunities to add to a conversation, to bring something unique, to bring something different. You can find your lane. Once you find your lane, then it's a matter of how do the clients want to receive that information? Okay. They love articles. They like writing. They like blogs. They like to read about it in earned media. And then what is most important to them? Because I'll tell you this, I think it's a great closing question, Kevin. In our 15 years of measuring the information consumption and preferences of buyers of legal and advisory services, it really comes down to 4 criteria. We've talked about them here and there during this conversation, but it's about relevance, it's about urgency, the time sensitivity, I got to deal with this now. It's about the novelty. That's where we have the opportunity to bring something, that unique point of view. But then the utility piece. Give them something actionable. Help them to frame how they should be thinking about that issue, the steps that they should take to mitigate a risk, or the consideration set to seize an emerging opportunity. Whatever it is, give them the 2 to 3 to 4 things they should be thinking about and doing right now. You're not giving away the legal advice in the context of that article, but you're going to compel the reader to want to pick up the phone, to want to talk more, to pick your brain, to have a conversation. And I think it's about finding the white space and then giving the readers what they care most about. And it's those 4 criteria: the relevance, the urgency, the novelty, but most important, it's that utility. They got to get the utility out of it.
And for the people that are leaning forward and they're going, this sounds incredible. Who is this John Corey guy and Aaron that have reached this level where I can rely on them and authoritative? Who are the type of organizations that you work for? What have you and Aaron built at Green Target and the Force? I mean, I've walked in and seen your team at different places in New York and Chicago and whatnot, but I'm not sure everybody grasps it that isn't familiar with Green Target. But you've got to be awfully proud of what you pulled together and the type of clients you're serving.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. You know what? We probably don't, get out there and tell that piece enough, but we just hit our 20th year. And so, yeah, we're a public relations communications consultancy. We're really focused on helping law professional services firms create, again, those unique positions of authority by helping them to participate skillfully, because you got to participate skillfully in these conversations. You can't just show up and throw ideas out there. You got to participate skillfully. You got to understand where clients are coming from, what they're looking for, and how you can engage. But we have, we represent some of the biggest law firms in the world, as well as some mid-sized firms and regional firms in a smattering of boutiques that we find interesting, but major consulting, accounting, investment banking, private equity, venture capital, insurance companies. So organizations that compete on expertise and reputation. They have no physical products, and they're marketing themselves to a corporate and business and financial audience. So that's the one thing that all of our clients have in common. We have just under 50 people in the US. We have 20 in the UK. We've been building this business brick by brick. We grow about 6 to 8% a year. We've had some years that we've been a little flat, like during the pandemic, but yeah, we've built a phenomenal team. I tell you, having our vision is to be a destination for talent. So like developing, recruiting, cultivating talent is really at the center of our business. You might say, well, gosh, aren't clients at the center? Well, for clients to be at the center, it's almost like the talent's got to be a little bit more center than them. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but we had hired a woman in our early days. She's a partner in the firm now, Laura Miller. She is a phenomenal talent, a phenomenal strategist, but she took a keen interest in talent strategy, in getting certifications and doing learning outside of the organization. And now she heads up our talent strategy. She heads up our DEI. She has put incredible programs and systems in place on the talent side. So yes, we're a destination for talent. We advise those who advise the world's most sophisticated businesses. That's a differentiation that we're proud of. We help to create those positions of authority. And ultimately, we are supporting smarter conversations. And we believe that our clients have a responsibility to contribute very skillfully to these very important conversations that are happening out there today. And I think, your clients and your publishers are playing such a critical role in driving those smarter conversations. So we're very aligned, I think, on that point.
I've enjoyed it. I want to thank you, John, for walking us through all the data that you put together to really put some meat on the bones in a way that we can digest it. And, if you're a legal professional thinking about whether you should be publishing and writing, I think, what you say matters, and what John has as far as data certainly should be influencing you in your thinking. What you write can build trust, it can build relationships, and it can build business. I don't think there's any doubt about it. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Kevin. Always a pleasure. And I hope to see you soon.
Likewise.